Hi everyone, welcome back, and I must thank all of you for showing the amazing interest that you have in the Simplicity series that we started sometime last year. And I would say this episode today that we are about to show to you and present to you, in my view, is one of the most important ones, because it's not often that I get a chance to speak to a CEO, and a CEO who is truly transformational and a CEO who truly believes in execution. Now, one feedback that we got from all of you, most of it was brilliant, very positive, very encouraging, and thank you so much for that. But there was one other feedback, and that was that we all live in the Reels and the TikTok world. So you wanted the episodes to be a little shorter. Now, however, we can't discuss the concept of simplicity and a telecom transformation in 90 seconds, can we? So it's going to be a little longer, but not as long as some of the previous episodes, right? So please tighten your seatbelts and let's get ready for this amazing episode on the Simplicity series. That said, very happy, very pleased, very privileged, I must also say very honored today to introduce our guest for this session, Mr. Manjot Singh Mann. Mr. Mann, I often call him Mann Bhai, is the CEO of M1, a brilliant telecom service provider out of the most amazing country called Singapore. He's also the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer at the Keppel Group. I can imagine clearly how easy his job must be. Mr. Mann, who grew up in India in various parts, coming from the army background that his father was at, really moved to the Southeast Asian part of the world in 2005 and has continued to create a mark for himself and for every company that he has served since then. We at Tech Mahindra have had a very cherished association with Mr. Mann, and every step of the way, I have to tell you, there was one common thing. There was learning. Learning for us that we could carry forward, we could imbibe into everything that we were doing so that we could become a better form of ourselves. Mann Bhai, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Manish. Thanks for having me over.
So I want to just dive in straight into the questions. The industry is talking about telco to techco. You have a very contrarian view to it. Share that with us.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite amusing and almost insulting that I always thought that we were the original techcos. When I joined the industry in 1999, I moved from fast-moving consumer goods to telecoms. And telecoms was the new economy, as we used to call it. And all the technical brains used to come to telecom because it was really a techco.
Yeah.
And now when I hear telco to techco, it's almost like I'll have to grab that land back for myself, which was my own. So it's amusing and insulting. And I think we'll have to really think hard of where did we lose out?
Where did we go wrong?
Where did we go wrong and why have we got repositioned? Could we have done things differently? The kind of investments that we've been putting in the industry, how have they played out? Has it really benefited our shareholders, our stakeholders? Or have we been so self-obsessed and inward-looking that we haven't thought about what are we creating for consumers at large, beyond just connectivity?
Yeah.
So I think that telco to techco actually raises a lot of emotion in me.
I can see.
Because it's something that was ours.
Yeah.
And where did we lose out? It's painful.
But did we lose it? Did the industry lose it because industry lost its growth trajectory? I'm not saying you particularly, because you've done remarkably well, but broader industry as such. And the loss happened largely because the real estate that you lost, when I say you as in the industry, lost it to the OTTs, to the more digital companies, digitally born companies rather. And the experimentations of revenue growth that have happened in some parts of the world, whether it's in the media space or the IoT space, have really not fructified. Hence, as a result, people are realizing and maybe thinking that calling ourselves and moving to, not just calling, but moving towards a more techco-based architecture yet again is probably the answer to that problem statement. Do you see it that way? Where will the growth come from?
So I really think the way where we really lost out was in innovation. And I'll tell you why. My belief. My belief is that we've been so capex deployment oriented, asset heavy. We always thought that spectrum and putting out towers was our business, which I think was important to create that infrastructure. But at some point in time, we should have realized that it's a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. And therefore, that return on capex deployed became really the benchmark and hallmark of a telco. And therefore, we just kept doing more of the same, because if you innovate and you want to be a real techco, you have to start taking risks. You have to innovate and you have to be able to say, I failed. And you could lose some money as well, because it's not all about winning all the time. But innovation is about failing fast, learning fast. But we were not ready to fail. We thought, because the return on capex deployed was so important to the CEOs, to the board members, that you almost thought that innovation is a bad thing to do, because innovation requires failing. And the moment you go back and say, I failed on the return on capex that I have deployed, the capex was huge. And therefore, I think somewhere till the time we start, thinking about asset light mentality, which is, I don't have to own everything. I can borrow, I can partner, and I can share. I can collaborate. The moment you start thinking on those lines, that innovation starts coming in, because then you are not dependent on the huge amount of capexes that you've deployed or spectrum charges that you've paid. And then the mindset changes. So it's all about the mindset of heavy assets, large capex deployed, and looking at returns and doing more of the same, because that's risk averse.
Manbhai, this is where I enjoy talking to you always, because you give it as is, right? You don't hide your emotions. I love what you said about the aspect of for a period of time, the industry probably forgot how to innovate. And you're right. I mean, ever since I started reading, I thought of telecom as the most innovative industry. It's almost like that restaurant analogy, that you open the restaurant in a fancy building, have fancy furniture, great decoration, interior decor, but yet you don't have a great service and you don't have great food. It's not likely to succeed. I guess it might open up onto a good house, but then it won't sustain over a period of time. Your point about the unwillingness to fail, I think, is the first cardinal sin in the process of innovation. So I want to then ask you this, and I'm really struggling with this question, that sometimes for a company or an industry or a sector to change, you need some kind of an inflection point. We thought that maybe the cloud or the virtualization part was going to be that pivotal moment. It didn't turn out to be that way. Then we thought 5G was likely to be that inflection point. I don't know what you say, but maybe the jury is still out and we haven't seen enough evidences that the revenue cycle will increase. Do you think now, with so much chatter about Gen AI, is the inflection point round the corner from a growth standpoint? Or do you fear that this is once again going to be a defensive play for the industry, that let's use AI to save cost, maybe become better at our operations, but we are not able to still solve the proverbial billion-dollar question in terms of where will the new revenue come from? Where is your mind at this point?
It's not an easy answer. I think the answer is not going to be one silver bullet. I wish there was, but there is not going to be one silver bullet, because the amount of ground that we've lost, you can't make up with one thing. It's not a switch on, switch off button.
Yeah.
When 4G came, we all thought, oh, 4G has come, LTE has come, and speeds are better. What can we do with it? Before we could decide what we could do with it, Facebooks and all the Amazons of the world created a mobile first strategy, and rode on our networks and created billions of
and you didn't get one extra dollar.
And we didn't get, in fact, we lost yields, because we had to kind of price lower and lower for every GB that we sold. Going forward, I think there has to be a combination of multiple thought processes that have to come together. It's not one silver bullet. So let me put it in different pieces as I think. One is on asset heavy and asset light. I think there is a very strong case of how telcos invest in their future infrastructure. Do we have to continue to own the assets, or do we start divesting assets? Do we find ways to collaborate more, even with our competitors, if that need be, to create a lower cost base on our infrastructure? So be it. But you can't cut cost on a growth story. You have to find ways to create revenue pools as well.
Absolutely.
Now, I think there are multiple things that are going on. One is, as you become more cloud native, and like we all say, we want to be cloud native, but I can assure you, not every operator has got the courage to go completely in the cloud and be a digital organization. You might move your infrastructure to cloud. I mean, that's a technology transformation.
Sure.
That is probably the easiest piece. The toughest piece is how do you put processes around it?
Yeah.
How do you build a culture of a digital organization? Which means you have to restructure the organization. You have to create roles and responsibilities which are of a digital nature. Your remuneration to people have to be in that sense. And you have to build a culture of fail fast and learn fast. I keep saying it's not bad to say I failed. It's not bad to say I need help. And that cultural mindset has to be changed and has to really evolve to be a digital organization. That's one part. The second part is that we have to get out of this vendor mindset. As telcos, we've always thought he's a vendor. It's partnerships. If you don't create that partnership models and be able to distinguish between supply chain and partnerships, things won't go your way. Because when you create an ecosystem of partners and everybody has the same skin in the game, then you start getting that positive kind of direction from each other. And you are partaking in successes together and in failures together as well. So there is a skin in the game, and it's a partnership that you create, and then you kind of evolve together.
Of course.
That's the second piece. The third piece, which is very important, is being able to monetize new technologies. Now, in 4G, like I said, we lost out. In 3G, we lost out. 5G has an opportunity, but there are a lot of things that have to come together to be able to monetize 5G. So I come from Singapore, and I can tell you that in Singapore, we probably have the best opportunity to monetize 5G. And I'll tell you why. Because 5G is a technology that requires huge amount of partnership between public and private. And the regulator has to be able to partake in this growth story, which means the regulator has to think and bring together partnerships, somewhere even goad us together as operators to help create that ecosystem by which we are able to innovate on 5G and monetize it. So in Singapore, for example, it's probably one of the only places in the world where we are direct competitors in the domestic market, but we have a JV to roll out 5G together. Spectrum has been shared with us. So it's clearly a direction where the regulator is saying, look, hold on a second, your capex and rollout, spectrum and rollout capexes will be taken care of. You have to pay, of course, but not to the extent that you've been paying in the past. However, there are obligations placed on us to be able to innovate and create use cases and experiments on 5G that can be monetized in the future.
Sure. And when you get incentives, you are willing to go ahead.
When you're getting incentives, you are putting all your mind and attention to do that. So that helps to create that whole ecosystem of innovation and trying to do new things. And partner, like I said, with different ecosystem partners and build together solutions, which may not be successful today, but you're learning a lot as you go along. So that's the other area. The third is to be able to adapt new technologies and find ways to monetize it. Like I said, even Gen AI for that matter, or AI. Now, AI to me has been in the pipe for a long time. And I think we've all seen how AI can really benefit the business. I hope and I pray that we are not in that hype cycle for Gen AI, but I do think that if we tackle this in the right way, not from a technology perspective, but from the business perspective,
from a customer
lens of understanding what this technology can do, we will find ways to monetize it. But if we only see from a technology perspective that Gen AI is, whatever it can do and cut cost and bring efficiency, and that is the way to use Gen AI, I think we are barking the wrong tree. So I think it's a combination of multiple elements that have to come together, but we can't say that one thing will turn the tide and make us
No, absolutely.
techcos again. I think it's lots of things have to come together. And as leaders, I think you and I, all of us, we have to play a big role there.
Yeah.
If we don't believe in it, we'll continue to bleed and be very suicidal in this industry because we're just losing value year after year.
Yeah. No, interesting. I agree. I think thank you for that very elaborate answer, but also emphasizing that it is doable, but it's not a switch on, switch off button.
Yeah.
It requires many, many things. And you alluded to two interesting aspects. One, thank you for giving that Singapore example of the role the government, the regulators, and the industry is coming together. So and we are incidentally recording this today in Copenhagen at the TM Forums DTW, and which also is about the community called the telco industry. Do you see this partnership? Back in the days, roaming was a huge partnership across the world, right? Everybody interconnect billing before that was a huge partnership in the world. Do you see the world of telco has become too fragmented and has become more localized? So there is a Singapore partnership. Is there a similar partnership possible in different countries and cross-border between telcos across the world on sharing? For example, is there a telco foundation large language model that is a need of the hour, for example? And I know there are arguments either ways that you don't need one, you need one. And I'm not necessarily taking you towards a Gen AI question, that's just as an example, but you can choose to answer that. Question is, do you see partnership in a different light for within the industry? And you also alluded to partnership outside in any different way quickly. I mean, in terms of how a telco can collaborate with other people, including companies like us, for example, who have, like you said, mostly play a vendor role, but can there be a different role going forward?
100%. 100%. I think clearly it is now proven that if you are not willing to collaborate and be able to understand and appreciate what's happening around the world and use each other's strengths to create that growth model, it'll be too inward looking. And you'll always struggle because either the scale will be against you or there'll be technology that's against you because you haven't built up enough strengths. I do think that there is huge opportunity to collaborate. But for that, a lot of regulations have to start molding around it. It's difficult because I think it's still a very protected industry. It's a very regulated industry. It's not going to be very easy for us to do it. However, I think there has to be a way to be able to use each other's learnings.
Yeah.
And I think forums like this are very important for us to keep talking to each other and finding out areas that we can collaborate in. And a collaboration with like-minded partners, not necessarily telecom operators, to your point, I think is the way to go.
As long as there is complementarity, why not?
As there's complementarity and there is a win-win situation and an opportunity to either use each other's skills to transfer to each other or each other's scale to transfer to each other. I think there's a huge opportunity. And I think that's the way to go because you cannot remain closed in a country and expect to have that kind of a...
So openness is very, very crucial.
Openness is crucial because at the end of the day, you need that scale for monetization.
Sure. So I think there's one other word you used earlier and we can't, if I go out in the industry and I say, what's Manjot's last name? If it was not Man, what would it be? People are likely to say, well, forget the last name. I'll even change the first name. It is operations and excellence, right? That's how you are known for. That's what... and that cannot happen without people.
Yes.
It cannot happen without talent, without skills, and it cannot happen without what you said earlier, a good culture.
Yes.
So maybe this is probably the last question, depending on what you say. Where, for this kind of a transformative time, for growth, for technology adoption, for regaining the innovation mantle back, it requires a different type of attractiveness, in terms of attracting set of people to the industry, right. Grooming skills, cultures, we heard about growth mindset and those kind of things. What's your take on the people, the talent, the culture aspect?
Manish, that's the toughest part in this transformation. And having gone through for the last 4 years at M1, what we're trying to do, We did a very quick dipstick before we started the transformation and really wanted to understand our own culture and behavior before we got into the transformation. When you start looking at transformation, clearly there are three sets of people. There is a set of people who are extremely excited about it and they want to get that change because they've had enough. And they will say, okay, let's do something different.
Yeah,
high time and something needs to get done. There is a set of people who say complete naysayers and saying, hold on a second, why are we getting into this? I don't want to be a part of that. It's easy because you have two sets of people. The problem is that the largest chunk sits in the middle. Out of which some keep quiet and they say, let's see how it goes. And some are very passively aggressive, saying, say yes to everything and not end up doing it. I think the challenge is how do you create the organization which, the whole organization rallies behind the call of transformation. And that is the biggest challenge. So at M1, what we did was, very interestingly, we realized that there were three behaviors that we wanted the organization to demonstrate during this transformation. So we had a list of nice sounding words, which were our values before we began the transformation. I said, knock it out. Let's look at our whole brand positioning as well as our value systems again, because we are getting into a huge transformation. So the reason for transformation we created as a center point of our brand.
Okay.
So M1 used to stand for Mobile One to start with.
I remember that.
Now M in mobile M1 stands for made to measure, which means because we are hyper-personalizing our services, because we want to create a segment of one, M stands for made to measure and 1 stands for segment of 1, which means the whole organization has to remember that this transformation is to create hyper-personalized services
for one customer.
For one customer so that we protect our customer lifetime value.
Brilliant.
So that's one part. The other is the values that we wanted people to demonstrate. We actually made values of our company. So the first one we said is ownership. Whoever is in this journey has to own this transformation. It cannot be somebody else's job to do it. It's your job to do it. So you cannot say, I'm not a part of it, let him do it. If you don't want to be a part of it, thank you very much. But if you are in it, then you have to own it.
Wow.
So the first value system was, we own it. The second, in a transformation in an organization which has been running for many years, for decades, and it's not a greenfield transformation, it's a brownfield transformation, is keep it real. Say the way it is. Because in transformation, you will go through pain. And if you're not able to voice your pain and you keep it inside, it will come out somehow or the other in some action that you are going to take in the future. So keep it real, say it the way it is.
Bad news is not
bad news is good news.
Is good news, exactly.
Bad news is good news because then you can act on it.
Yeah.
So keep it real, say the way you like it. Yes, be respectful, because at the end of the day, you are in a professional atmosphere, but keep it real.
Yeah.
So the second was keep it real. The third value system was be sunshine, which means that it's all for a good cause. So be happy when you're doing it.
Oh, nice.
Don't treat it as a drudgery. Don't think that we pushed you into a hole and you're clawing your back out of the hole. It's all for a good cause. So be sunshine, celebrate small victories, celebrate successes.
Wow.
Bring people with you. Not everybody will be at the same pace as some people. So there has to be a camaraderie. Carry the team with you and be sunshine, spread happiness.
Wow.
And look at life positively, optimistically. So we created these three values. And these three values are defining for our transformation. Now, is it very easy, again, like a switch off, switch on button for it to percolate down the organization? No, it is not. But we just keep communicating all the time.
Wow.
So we have so many pulse surveys. We keep asking people what are they happy with, what are they unhappy with. We keep acting on it. We keep talking to people, communicating to the last person in the organization. And last bit that I always say, because I am very fond of sports myself, like you are, you must have the stamina. It's a long haul.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to get tired, then there's trouble. You have to have the stamina, you have to have the resilience of continuing to plow through with all these three values. And I can tell you, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Look, I have to look at the audience and ask one question to all of you. To say that this chat and this session and Mr. Mann's answers were masterclass would be an understatement. I think almost every answer to every question is a masterclass in itself, from strategy to execution to the people culture aspect to the process of innovation and why we are failing and how we can succeed potentially. I think it's been a brilliant set of answers. I really think you pretty much have given a blueprint of sorts in this very short session, Man bhai. If there was one thing that you want to leave the audience with in terms of the to-go, the takeaway, or the to-do, action, that because most of our audience are telecom and the software industry professionals. And yes, there are industry professionals too from a telco standpoint. So there's one thing that comes to your mind at this point saying, okay, if I wake up tomorrow morning, right, what is it that I should start doing listening to this session? What would that be?
Change is imminent. Transformation is not a bad word. But if you're not operationally, tuned to looking at this transformation of something that is going to change our future and be completely dedicated to it and transform from within, transformation will always remain a lipstick on a proverbial pig.
Fantastic. Like one of my mentors used to say that if a change has not translated into mathematics, it is English.
It is English.
So,
and a P&L to protect, of course.
Absolutely. Now, look, it's been a fantastic times, doing this with you. Thank you so much for your partnership with Tech Mahindra. Thank you so much for your inspiration all along. I am really taking away a few things myself as in terms of my learning from this session, though I've known you for years. But like I've said at the front, there's always a new thing to learn from you because you're constantly thinking about changes all the time. Thank you so much. Really appreciate from the bottom of my heart all 160,000 of Tech Mahindra employees and our partners. Thank you for your leadership and for your inspiration.
Thank you, Manish. Thanks for having me here and thanks for being a lovely partner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.